All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Terence Crawford's coach is worried about Errol Spence Jr. pressing Bud, but says that, hey, we respect his size, we respect his strength. He's a very, very good fighter, but Bud is just on a different level, man, and he's nowhere near what the best of him can be. That is what his coach, Red Spikes, had to say about the fight. We're going to talk about that. But we're going to talk about some other things relative to that fight in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford is most definitely the biggest fight in American boxing, and that makes it one of the biggest fights in all of boxing. Truthfully, it's probably the biggest fight in boxing right now because of the amount of vitriol, the amount of venom, the amount of nastiness that is going out between these camps and between the fans. Well, actually, it's the camp and the fans, because Terence Crawford doesn't have much of a fan base anymore, because over the last couple years, specifically since he got to welterweight, people have been begging this guy to fight somebody and begging Bob Arum to give a fight that people want to see. And that is not me. That is Terence Crawford fans saying this, right? So, obviously, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, big thing. I believe Terence Crawford wants that fight, I think. Errol Spence Jr. wants that fight for the moment. And it can absolutely positively be a huge, huge fight, because the tension in this fight, the tension for the fight in America is way higher than it was just a year ago. It is getting to the point that conversations about Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. in the boxing community are downright nasty, personal, and you can really tell that the camps, the fighters around the camps, everybody is on edge about it. Because when I first used to talk about this subject, most people behind the scenes would tell me, oh man, Errol and Terence are cool. They're cool. They got each other's phone numbers. They don't have a problem with each other, right? It's just the fans around it, and eventually the fight will happen. Over time, though, I start hearing just a little bit more anxiousness between Errol and Terence on both sides, not getting into any situation, but Errol's irritated, Terence is irritated, the fan bases of Errol is irritated, Terence Crawford's fan base is evaporating, so it's just this really crazy situation that I watch going on, right? So not too long ago, I decided, right, that it's like, look, man, this is getting so heavily weighed into, towards Errol Spence Jr. and against Terence Crawford, that I was like, look, man, the goal of this thing is to actually have the fight, isn't it? So I don't want to beat up on Bob Arum and Terence Crawford and all this stuff and take it really far beyond the fight, right? Like the problems that with Bob Arum, dude, and boxing and all that stuff, dude, everybody knows what's going on with that. That's not a mystery. Bob Arum has in-house fights. Bob Arum don't always tell the truth. That's stuff you just going back and forth about that everybody already knows. But this stuff with Terence Crawford and all that, man, it's like I don't really, because I know he's an excellent fighter, and it's very difficult to separate between what he did at 135, what he did at 140, and what he's doing at 147. It's just, so you hear the camps, all of this stuff going on, right? Where is he ducking? Is he not ducking? Who fought the best? All of that stuff going around is making it look like there's no true respect for the other fighters for the two fighters for each other, right? Terence Crawford says, man, you can't offer me 30%. That's disrespectful, right? Errol says, look, man, you can't be telling me that it's 50-50, dude, when I'm doing all the pay-per-views, right? All of that type of stuff. So the reason I give you that background is because over the last couple weeks, that's longer than that, man. I've been trying to reach out to Terence Crawford's camp because, quite honestly, dude, it's very hard to know who their camp is because there's 3 coaches in there. There's the Hispanic guy. There's now whose name I don't even remember because he doesn't talk a lot in the media, named Red Spikes. And then obviously there's Bomac. So it's very hard to get a gauge on what's going on in that camp. So I'm like, you know what? Let me reach out to the camp, because I know I can listen and see how Letitia Crawford is getting, was upset with Bob Arum, right? And there's this stuff about the LDBC and YouTube channels. So I'm like, hey, man, let me reach out to these guys and see if I can talk to Bernie the Boxer, which I will never do again, by the way. I will never do again. But in doing so, I got directed by Bernie the Boxer in a very, very, very unpleasant way, in what I consider to be a very disrespectful way, along with Jermel Herring and Red Spikes. I just went to an Instagram and got live streaming, got inundated with insults. And I was like, man, just here's my phone number. Just call me. If there's a story that you want out, just tell me, and I'll put the video out. If there's anything that you don't think is not true, or something that's not true, or something you didn't like how it's stated, let me know, and I'll make the change, because I want to make sure that you, Team Crawford, are getting treated fairly, at least on this channel. I don't want to mistreat people. I don't want to be unfair. But sometimes if I see it one way, I'm going to call it that way. But if somebody tells me, hey, man, ring, ring, look, man, that's a little bit different than what you see, I'll say thank you and I'll go correct it, right? So I've been looking for this opportunity with Terence Crawford, and something did come out of it. An article that was written by Three Kings Boxing, quoting a channel that I have no clue why Terence Crawford would even be on, or these guys would ever be on if they expect anybody to hear the interview. But I go and get the interview, and he says, look, Red Spikes was very respectful of Errol Spence Jr. And he was clear that he respected him and his ability to fight, his size, his strength. And he was like, yeah, man, this guy's size could be a problem because, hey, he's a big guy, but you don't understand. Bud is nowhere near as good as Bud can be. Bud is also getting bigger. He's a strong guy, and we think we can beat this guy. There was no disrespect from Red Spikes to Terence Crawford. There was true appreciation of from Red Spike to Errol Spence Jr. and his accomplishments. From what I could hear, there was literally nothing disrespectful. But then what happened next? Bernie the Boxer says that he'll go slap Errol Spence Jr. in the face. And I'm like, what? Like, you really are just out here talking like you're going to go beat up Errol Spence? What is this? So anyway, I'm like, dude, now I get it. Now I get it. That is why people told me, dude, it is very, very hard to deal with Terence Crawford's camp. A lot of Terence Crawford's camp's problem is Terence Crawford's camp causing the problems, because they push people away in ways that are just, it's unreasonable. Like, you have a guy, the guy that they did this interview on, right? The one that they were like, Fanon, why didn't you report this? And I was like, hey man, give me the article. Let me know. Just tell me. What article do you want me to talk about? I can't read every article, but if you send it to me and you say, hey man, do a video on this, I'll do it. So I go look at the article that he wants me to look at. And I'm like, are you serious? This guy's a troll. This guy's literally a troll. There's nothing substantive about this guy. He's not in the mainstream conversation of boxing within the YouTube community. Why would I ever come across that article, man? Like, really? Like, on what planet would I come across that? Now, Three Kings Boxing, once I saw it was on Three Kings Boxing, I saw it. I was like, oh, okay. But they were quoting somebody else. That's a third-hand article. How am I supposed to know about that? But anyway, I tell you all this to say this. There's a lot of pressure out there about the fight going on. Terence Crawford's camp is on edge. Errol Spence Jr.'s camp is completely on edge. But both, not completely, they're on edge about it. They're irritated about it, right? At least that's what I see from a fan's perspective on the outside looking in. But Terence Crawford is in his camp, cannot be making this any easier. When you have people who reach out to them, want to treat them fairly, and then they talk about them like dogs to their face. Not that I mind being talked about like a dog to my face, because it's whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just trying to get around to, hey, man, what is it that the Terence Crawford's camp thinks that they should be communicated? What clear message do you want communicated? What clear messages did I not get right that you don't think are right? And how can I correct that? That is how mature individuals work and communicate with each other to solve a problem. But that's not what they do. They inundate you with insults. They demean you. They challenge you to fights and things like that. Like, I'm 51 years old. What difference does it make if I can't beat up a 15-year-old boxer, Bernie? What sense does that make? I'm not going to fight a 15-year-old boxer. Why are you telling me the fact that I say that Terence Crawford's resume is weak, the fact that I can't beat up a 15-year-old boxer because I'm not a boxer and I'm an old man has nothing to do with why Terence Crawford isn't fighting. So when you point that out to people, all they are like is, what, are you a kid or something? Like, how old are you, man? $40 million, dog. If it's a $100 million fight and Bud gets $40 million, that's $40 million. If Bud fights somebody else for $4 million, that's 100% of $4 million. Why wouldn't you want the 40 instead of the 4? That's the only math. That's the only question that people should be asking. Why do you care about the percentage when you're getting paid in actual dollars? Why don't you negotiate towards an actual dollar amount that will make you happy and feel like your fight is worth the risk for you? Don't go around talking about and acting like Errol Spence ain't fought nobody and you deserve 50-50 for the pay-per-views you never had that never were successful. It's just, come on, man. Be practical with the people. Try to make the deal, man. But don't work so hard at trying to make people not like you. I mean, I worked hard and I know the result will be that a lot of people will not like me, but I'm not going out of my way just to make sure that they don't. So I tried my best over the last couple days to do positive videos about Terence Crawford and about Bernie, the boxer, in that interview he did with Blue Blood, which was a complete and utter disaster for him, a disaster for Team Crawford, and tried to, but it just can't be. It just can't be. Bud is going to be Bud. If Bud wants this fight, Bud will get the fight, maybe. If not, dude, Bud is just going to be, hopefully he'll work on his maybe his broadcasting skills or something so he can sit next to Tim Bradley. Because quite honestly, dude, he ain't making no more money than Tim Bradley was making 10 years ago. I mean, but okay, y'all do you. I just hope that I get to see the fight. Never will reach out to Team Crawford for anything ever again in my life. I promise you, dog. But if I said something that was not true, please feel free to tell me what I said that was not true. Okay? Not true. And I have no problem correcting it, just like I did for Jermell Herring in the past. Although he seems to have forgotten it while he and his boys are in there talking. Well, they didn't say anything, but just in the room where this guy is just, wow. But anyway, it is what it is. That's boxing on YouTube. And with that, I'm out. Peace.